Look around the room you're sitting in right now. Really look. The state of it, clean or cluttered, ordered or chaotic, cared for or neglected, is telling a story. And according to a tradition that has thought about this more deeply than almost any other, it's not the story you think. It's not a story about whether you're lazy or busy or a good housekeeper. It's a story about something much closer to the bone. In Zen tradition, there's an idea that runs quietly beneath centuries of practice, that the state of your outer environment is a mirror of the state of your inner world, that a home doesn't just hold your life, it reflects it, and that if you want to know what's actually happening inside a person, their mind, their heart, the weather of their inner life, you could do worse than to simply look at the space they live in. Now, before you brace yourself, understand this. What follows is not an accusation. This is the opposite of the harsh voice that tells you a messy home means you failed. The Zen view is far gentler and far more useful. It says a dirty home is not a verdict on your character. It's a message from your inner life, information offered with compassion about something that may need attention. And once you can read that message, your home stops being a source of shame and becomes something surprisingly valuable, an honest mirror showing you things about yourself you might otherwise never see. Today, I want to walk you through what Zen monks would say a dirty home really reveals, not to judge you, but to help you read your own space with new eyes. And I promise you, by the end, you'll never look at a pile of dishes or a cluttered room quite the same way again. Because the last thing on this list, what the monks would say matters most, turns the entire idea on its head, and it's the most hopeful thing of all. Before we go on, a quiet note. The Japanese home was never really about the method. It's about a home that lets you rest, instead of one more thing to keep perfect. I wrote a small book on that idea. Wabi Sabi, Finding Peace in an Imperfect Life. First link below, if it calls to you. For now, let's keep going. Let's begin with the idea underneath everything. The mirror. To understand any of this, you have to understand the central Zen insight, that inner and outer are not separate. We tend to imagine our inner life, our thoughts, our stress, our emotional state, as private, invisible, sealed inside us, and we imagine our home as just a neutral container, a set of rooms we happen to occupy. Zen sees it differently. It sees a constant flowing relationship between the two. The state of your mind shapes the state of your space, moment by moment, through 1,000 small actions and inactions. And the state of your space, in turn, shapes your mind. A chaotic room breeds a chaotic mind, a calm room. This is why, in Zen monasteries, the cleaning of the space is not a chore delegated to whoever's least important. It's a central spiritual practice done by everyone, every day, with full attention. The monks aren't just keeping the temple tidy. They understand that tending the outer space and tending the inner self are, in a real sense, the same activity. To clean a room mindfully is to clean the mind. And to let a space fall into neglect is, very often, a sign that something within has been neglected too. So when a Zen monk looks at a dirty home, he isn't seeing a housekeeping failure, he's reading a mirror. And here is what he sees reflected in it. But first, one thing worth making clear, because it's the key that unlocks everything that follows. The monks would never claim the mirror is simple or literal, that a single dish in the sink means your soul is in crisis. That would be absurd. And Zen is not absurd. The mirror reflects patterns, not moments. It's not the occasional mess after a busy day that tells you anything. That's just life. It's the persistent state of your space over time, the ongoing relationship you have with the place you live, that quietly reveals the ongoing state of your inner world. A home is honest in the way a face is honest, not in any single expression, but in the lines that form over years. What the monks read is not a snapshot, it's the pattern. Keep that in mind as we go through what those patterns reveal. What a cluttered home says, a cluttered mind. The first and most direct thing the monks would say is this: an overwhelmed, cluttered space very often reflects an overwhelmed, cluttered mind. Think about how clutter actually accumulates. It's rarely a single decision. It's the slow buildup of 1,000 small things left undone. The object not put away, the decision deferred, the "I'll deal with it later," repeated until later never comes. And what does that pattern reflect? Usually, a mind that is carrying too much. When we're mentally overloaded, stressed, scattered, pulled in too many directions, The small maintenance of our space is the first thing to fall away because there's simply no capacity left for it. The clutter on the surfaces is a visible echo of the clutter in the head. This is why tidying a space so often produces a feeling of mental relief that seems out of proportion to the physical act. You're not just clearing objects, you're clearing the visible representation of your own overwhelm. The monks would say the two are connected at the root. A mind full of unfinished business produces a home full of unfinished business. And often, the fastest way to begin quieting the mind is to begin gently ordering the space, because the relationship flows both ways. What it says, not that you're lazy, that you're carrying more than you have capacity to hold, and it's showing. What a neglected home says, a self being neglected. Here's one the monks would name with particular gentleness, because it matters. When a home is not just messy but genuinely neglected, when basic care has stopped, it very often reflects a person who has stopped caring for themselves. This is one of the most quietly important truths in this whole idea. There's a well-understood connection between our inner state and how we tend our environment. When someone is struggling, worn down, low, depleted, going through something heavy, one of the first and clearest signs is that the care of their space falls away. The dishes pile up, the basic upkeep stops, not because they become lazy, but because the energy required for that care has been consumed by whatever they're carrying inside. The monks would say, don't read a neglected home as a character flaw, read it as a signal. When you notice that you've stopped tending your space, it's worth asking gently whether you've also stopped tending yourself, whether something inside needs care that isn't getting it. The home in this reading becomes an early warning system for your own well-being. A space that has fallen into neglect is often a person quietly asking for care. And the compassionate response is not, clean up, you slob. It's what's going on with you, and what do you need? What it says, not that you don't care, that you may be depleted, and the care you're not giving your space might be care you're not giving yourself. There's something worth pausing on here because it's genuinely important, and the monks would insist on it. This particular reading is why the whole messy home means bad person narrative is not just unkind, but actively harmful. A person going through grief, illness, exhaustion, or a hard season does not need to be told they've failed at housekeeping. That shame lands on top of an already heavy load and makes everything worse. The Zen reading offers the opposite. It treats the neglected home as a form of communication, a quiet signal that a person is struggling and needs care rather than criticism. If that person is you, the kindest and most useful thing you can do is not to berate yourself into cleaning, but to recognize the signal for what it is, and to begin, gently, with a single small act of care, for the space and for yourself at the same time. What holding on to everything says? Holding on to the past. The monks would look at a different kind of dirty home, not the neglected one, but the overflowing one, packed with things that are never used and never released, and read something specific in it, an attachment to the past and a difficulty letting go. Zen places great weight on impermanence and non-attachment, the understanding that clinging to things is a source of suffering, and that peace comes partly from the ability to let go. A home stuffed with objects that no longer serve any purpose in the present, the things kept out of guilt, out of someday, out of who you used to be or hope to become, is, in the Zen reading, a very physical form of clinging. Each unreleased object is a small anchor to a past that's already gone, or a future that isn't coming. And here's what the monks would say this reveals. Not greed exactly, but fear. The inability to let go of objects usually reflects a deeper difficulty with letting go in general, of the past, of former versions of ourselves, of the security we imagine our possessions give us. The overflowing home is often a person holding on tightly, afraid of the empty space that release would create. The clutter isn't really about the objects, it's about what letting them go would mean. To clear such a home is genuinely difficult, not because the physical act is hard, but because each object asks you to release a small piece of the past. And that's the real work, the inner work, that the outer clutter reflects. What it says, not that you're a hoarder, that you may be holding tightly to a past that's asking to be released. What the always postponed mess says, a life lived elsewhere. Here's a subtle one the monks would notice. The home that's perpetually about to be cleaned The mess that's always going to be dealt with tomorrow, the space kept in a permanent state of almost. This reflects a particular inner pattern. One Zen speaks to directly, a life lived anywhere but the present moment. The person whose home is always about to be handled is often a person whose attention is always somewhere else. In the future they're rushing toward, in the past they're replaying, in the endless mental elsewhere that pulls us out of the here and now. The dishes don't get done because the person is never quite present with the dishes. They're mentally already on to the next thing, treating the actual moment they're in as something to get through rather than something to inhabit. Zen's whole practice is a return to presence, to being fully here in this moment, with whatever is actually in front of you, rather than lost in thought about elsewhere. And a home that's perpetually postponed reflects the absence of that presence. The monks would say, the mess isn't really the problem. The mess is a symptom of a mind that's never quite here, that treats the present moment and the ordinary tasks within it as an obstacle on the way to some more important moment that never actually arrives. Learning to be present with the small task in front of you, they'd say, is both how the home gets tended and how the deeper restlessness begins to heal. What it says, not that you're a procrastinator, that your attention may be living everywhere except the present moment you're actually in. What the chaos says, a lack of boundaries. The monks would read one more thing in a certain kind of dirty home, the one where everything bleeds into everything, where there's no order, no designated place, no separation between one thing and another, a life without clear boundaries. In Zen thought, and in Japanese spatial culture generally, there's deep attention to boundaries and distinctions, the line between inside and outside, between one space and its purpose and another, between what belongs where. A home where these distinctions have collapsed entirely, where chaos reigns because nothing has its place and everything mixes together, can reflect an inner life where boundaries have similarly blurred, where a person struggles to separate work from rest, one obligation from another, their own needs from everyone else's demands. The external chaos mirrors an internal one, a life without the clear lines that create order and peace. The monks would say this gently too. The disorder isn't a moral failing. It's a reflection of an inner life that may be lacking the boundaries it needs. And the practice of creating order in the home, giving things their places, restoring the distinctions between spaces and purposes, can be a way of beginning to create those boundaries within too. Order in the space can teach order in the self. What it says, not that you're disorganized, that the boundaries your inner life needs may have blurred, and the space is showing it. What it all really means, and the turn that changes everything. Now, here's where the monks would stop you. Because if you've been listening to all of this as a series of accusations, you've misunderstood the entire teaching. And this is the turn that changes everything. The Zen point of all this is not to make you feel ashamed of your home. It's the exact opposite. The whole insight is offered in a spirit of compassion, because the moment you can read your home as a mirror rather than a verdict, it becomes one of the most useful tools you have for understanding and caring for yourself. Here's the reframe. Most of us treat a messy home as evidence of personal failure, proof that we're lazy, undisciplined, not good enough. That voice is cruel, and it's also useless because shame doesn't help anyone clean anything. It just adds a layer of suffering on top of whatever was already there. The Zen view throws that voice out entirely. It says, your home is not judging you, it's informing you. When your space falls into disorder, that's not a failure. It's a message from your inner life, telling you that something needs attention. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you're depleted and not caring for yourself. Maybe you're holding on to a past you need to release, or living everywhere but the present, or lacking boundaries you need to draw. The mess is information, offered with compassion about what's happening inside you. And this is why, in Zen, the response to a dirty home is never shame. It's care. You don't attack the mess as an enemy. You tend the space as an act of kindness toward yourself, knowing that as you tend the outer, you tend the inner too. This is the deepest secret of the whole tradition. Cleaning your home, done with attention and compassion rather than self-punishment, is a way of caring for your own mind and heart. The made bed is a small kindness to yourself. The wiped counter is a small act of self-respect. The cleared clutter is a small release of the past. You're not just cleaning a house, you're tending the inner life the house reflects. So the final thing the monks would say a dirty home reveals is the most hopeful of all. A self that is worth caring for, showing you exactly where care is needed. Your home is not accusing you. It's showing you, with perfect honesty and no judgment, where your inner life is asking for kindness. And that makes it not a source of shame, but a gift, a mirror you can learn to read. And in reading, learn to care for the person looking back. What to do with this? So here's what to take from all of it. And it's simple. The next time you look at a messy room and feel that familiar wave of shame, stop. And instead of hearing the cruel voice that says you failed, try asking the Zen question instead. What is this telling me? Am I overwhelmed? Am I depleted? Am I holding on to something I need to release? Am I never quite present? What, gently, does this space reflect about what's happening inside me right now? And then respond not with punishment, but with care. Clean one small thing, not to fix a failure, but as a small act of kindness towards yourself. Make the bed as a gift to the person who has to sleep in it. You. Wipe one surface as a quiet gesture of self-respect. Release one object as a small practice of letting go. Do it with attention, gently, knowing that as you tend the space, you're tending the self it mirrors, because that's what a dirty home really says in the end. Not that you're a failure, but that you're a human being carrying something, and that the space around you is faithfully, compassionately reflecting it back, so that you might see it, and be a little kinder to yourself. Now I'd genuinely like to hear from you. When you look honestly at your own home right now, what do you think it's reflecting back about your inner life these days? Tell me in the comments as honestly as you're comfortable, because I suspect a lot of us are seeing the same things. And if this gave you a gentler way to look at your own space and yourself, share it with one person who's been too hard on themselves lately. It might be exactly what they needed to hear. I'll see you in the next one.